This one's a little different, and we'll get into it and talk a little bit why that's different, focusing on modes of operation and that sort of thing. So with that, introduce Chief Medina.
I just want to thank everybody for being here today, and we're going to be going over an operation that we just conducted to help with organized retail crime and to help with our shoplifting problems. You know, during the past several months, I've been trying to really take note of what the community thinks is important to them. You know, we got a lot of complaints about license plates, and we did specific operations to address license plate violations. We've done the same with red lights. I'm telling you, a cell phone operation is in the near future. That will be the next thing that we're going to be dealing with. But also on the crime side, you know, we've taken a lot of steps forward with our homicide investigation. That was something important to the community a while back. And we know that the month of May, June are key for us in trying to reduce our numbers of homicides. Those are the months, May of 2022 was the month that we had the most homicides ever in 1 month period in the city of Albuquerque. So you may ask, how is this impacting some of those homicide rates? Well, I wanted to make sure that we had a big presence in the community in the months of May, June, so we could try to lower our homicide numbers through taking drivers of crime to jail, also just being a visible presence and people seeing us more and more in the community. And it's always been a belief of mine that, you know, there are key people who are within the community that are committing a variety of crimes up to and including homicide. And when we did our homicide update last year, you know, Gilbert talked about the fact that 25% of them had a property crimes history. So you could see quickly that taking some of these people into custody, key ones, is important. Some of them will stay in custody, but the vast majority of these individuals are released, and that's something that we want to highlight, is that we have to change the system. We need to bring available resources to drug addicts. We need to bring available resources to people with mental health illness, and we need to bring resources to the homeless. And you're going to see that today's presentation is going to cover those three topics quite extensively. So we are going to have increased presence in the community over the next few months as we proactively try to be out in the community as much as possible to lower crime during these key summer months. But I just want to thank Commander Hartsock and all his people for all of their hard work last week in going out and taking some of these individuals into custody. And we'll take some questions at the end. I'm pretty sure there's going to be some questions reference city transportation, but we'll wait till the end and we'll take those questions at that time. So I'll turn it over to Kyle. Thanks.
Hi guys, I'm Interim Commander Kyle Hartsock with the Investigative Enhancement Division, and like Chief said, you know, working retail crime operations is nothing new for our department. What we've been working on is we have a new chain of command, and that's Deputy Commander Josh Hawks and Lieutenant Connor Olquist. In terms of our outreach to the business community of Albuquerque, and for the most part, our retail business community in town is very excited to continue to work with us and are constantly looking for ways to reduce the amount of theft that's occurring in their stores. Last week what we did and what we plan on continuing to do through this summer and indefinitely is having these kind of all hands operations within our divisions where we're going out, we are directly interfacing with the stores and their loss prevention and employees and creating zero tolerance zones for any kind of theft that's occurring inside those businesses while we're there. We're not delusional that we can always arrest and charge 100% of the offenders. But just like the other operations that Chief does, during certain time periods, we want a zero tolerance, and that's what we did. We primarily focused on the Coronado and Cottonwood shopping areas last week, but we also know there's many other shopping areas. There's lots of grocery stores that get hit with lots of theft and vandalism. There's, of course, regular retail stores. There are shopping centers. So we were excited to get out there. We used some new technology in there. And what we also wanted to do was look at, you know, it's one thing that we know someone is stealing, but we wanted to better track and understand how are they getting to these businesses, right? If they're driving up, are we seeing this car used in lots of other thefts, right? Doing that more traditional kind of research. And if they're not driving up, what's their mode of transportation? One of the things we found is out of the 31 or so offenders that we'll start to detail a little bit here, 29 of them did not drive a car to the store to commit the theft. A big handful of them are using the city bus or walking up from places we couldn't clearly see. And we didn't believe that they're parking and walking up. We think they're likely unsheltered or transient in nature, but walking into these shopping districts and just committing very bold and brazen thefts with no real fear of enforcement. During the week-long operation, 31 different persons were charged with shoplifting offenses. These are new charges, but we also cleared out 29 active warrants on those same 31 people. So what that tells us is a lot of them are already inside that criminal justice system. They had current warrants for their arrests. This means they're not being reliable and showing up to court or appointments or treatment or whatever the court was asking them to do. And on top of it, they're committing new crimes in the community. The total approximate value of the merchandise that was stolen just from these 31 people, you can see, was almost $7,000. Now, when you guys eventually get the list of all the names, you'll see most of these were misdemeanors, under $500. This is important because July 1, the law is changing. Now, if you have multiple thefts over a 90-day period, we can aggregate all of those numbers together. And if you go over that $500 mark, it's going to be a felony. Our detectives and officers very much plan on aggressively using this law. You might only steal $30 or $40 or $80 right now, but if you keep it up and keep doing it, you are going to get hit with a felony and have a much different outcome in court. That's the idea behind the law, and our department and division are very excited to be the forefront of making that law used very effectively in Albuquerque. A couple of the arrests we want to highlight. The highest dollar amount we had was from Mr. Wayne Toya from Kohl's, $691, and again, he just walked up to the place, no obvious car, and took that merchandise. Once he was contacted by police, he was compliant and immediately gave all the property back up, but again, a lot of these guys were operating with a ton of confidence that nobody would stop them as they committed these crimes, and we definitely want to change that attitude and behavior. Malachi Jolly was interesting. We actually arrested him near Coronado Mall. The store H&M actually didn't even have an idea that they had something to walk out of their store. We actually observed it and stopped him. And interesting enough, we had officers from the Northwest Area Command, which cover the Cottonwood shopping area, but we were near Coronado this day. They recognized him from hitting the Cottonwood area a lot. But he wasn't really known to the Coronado area, which also just shows the amount of travel going back between these shopping areas, that they're not discriminating based on location. Any store that they can steal from, they will. He was utilizing the city bus to transport himself back and forth. Bryant Begay has many felony level shoplifting offenses in the court system, had warrants for his arrest from our organized crime unit at the time of the shoplifting, and stole again. And again, not only will the new law affect him, but he's also someone that he doesn't appear to be reacting to the court's methods of treating this person. And the business community is the one getting hit by him over and over again. And finally, one that I'll have video to show you with that we wanted to highlight is Lori Maldonado. At the time of her arrest last week, she was actually on pretrial release from a November shoplifting where she produced a gun and showed the gun to an employee when the employee tried to stop her on the way out, which kind of lets you understand maybe why sometimes the stores could be hesitant to stop people from stealing, because sometimes they point a gun at them. She had an arrest warrant issued for her, was arrested, a detention motion was filed, a judge decided that she was okay to let out, and one day last week at the Burlington Coat Factory near Cottonwood Mall, her and an associate stayed inside the store for quite some time. This is important too. The stores might see a thief inside, know that they might be up to no good, but can we have our officers wait for 90 minutes outside where they pick their stuff out and maybe decide if they're going to steal, maybe change their mind? It's hard to manage our resources like that. During this TAC plan, we could actually just wait. We did, and she did what is becoming more common, where she used the fire escapes of the stores to just run out with merchandise. I'll show you that. Some of that video right now is her leaving the store. She's in the back there with the cart. And again, this is in Burlington Coat Factory by Cottonwood. Now, unfortunately for Lori, what she didn't know, her day was going to get worse because several of our detectives were outside in communication with loss prevention in the store. We watched her leave the store, and we'll show you a video of our from our vantage point of her now getting out with her co-conspirator who drove the car up to pick her up.
Flipping around to go east again. Rail 2 is out the emergency exit, out the emergency exit with merchandise. So we take it off east. They're both in the car.
Now, Lori and her partner were a little bit more organized than most of our thieves last week. And we looked at their history. They also had a more dangerous and violent history in doing this. So in all, again, we charged 31. We saw a big mix of who came. But some of the things that stuck out again is out of the 31 arrests, 29 of them used a city bus or walked up. So we want to work to try to address that too, to help the stores defend up better, to protect their property, and also how they interact with our department. Orca and ARAPA are already organizations where the stores work together. One thing we noticed that they were missing is us telling them who we've arrested and charged. One thing that became clear during this operation is as we shared pictures on of who we were arresting just on the operation, other stores that were participating said, I know that guy. That guy steals from me all the time, but we never knew who he was. We have his information, so now we can also put him in our logs. If he walks in, we can just turn him right back out. So we're excited about the results, and we want to let you guys know this is going to continue. This isn't going to stop. We're going to continue to pick different shopping areas and districts, work with the businesses, and in fact, zero tolerance enforcement during those times of operation. If you were doing this kind of thieving, you're going to stand a much higher chance of arrest very, very soon. And with the new law kicking in, it's a good chance it's going to be a felony.
You know, one thing is, Kyle also touched upon, is we are working to bring back some of our partnerships. Anybody who was here during the, 2010, 11 era, I was in property crimes, and we had strong relationships with the big box stores through ARAPA. We had the Construction Industry Crime Alliance. We had working groups with recyclable metals and the state RLD, and we've met, and I recognize that we need to bring these partnerships back. They got taken away at some point in time, and that was one of my commitments when I became chief, is bring those partnerships back. And I'm happy to announce that Deputy Commander Josh Hawks was hired, and his sole job is to help redevelop those relationships. You heard Kyle talk about the fact that, once they started sharing information, other stores knew who these individuals were. So we have already met with RLD. We want to make sure that we have a strong stance with new laws coming into place for catalytic converters, how we're going to be looking at recycle centers and ensuring that they're following the rules, and can we identify suspects from there? If somebody goes to a recycle center with 13 catalytic converters, well, I'm pretty sure I want to know that I want to talk to that individual, because where did 13 catalytic converters come from? So that's kind of what we're trying to work on developing, and that's why those partnerships are key to us, and that's why we're taking these steps with not only the enforcement aspects, but also more information sharing and building those partnerships back up to help us fight crime. With that, I think we'll take any questions that you may have. If I don't like the question, I'll give it to Kyle. I'm just kidding. Yes, ma'am.
Do you happen to know how many of these folks that you arrested are still in custody? How many of them?
Kyle should probably know.
Yeah, so Lori Maldonado and Mr. Begay should both still be in custody because they had other pending cases that they now violated. And we talked to the DA's office about them during the arrest, and definitely on Lori because she had a gun in her prior case. They very much agreed she needs to stay in jail until trial. Hopefully the judges agree.
Did we get one other person with a firearm?
No.
No, okay. Yes, ma'am.
Do we know how many of these people were homeless or used drugs?
I would say almost all of them, but
Yeah, I mean, we definitely found drugs on some of them. And again, we did ask questions. We can only rely on what they were telling us. We didn't spend a lot of time, verifying the status. But yeah, I would agree with Chief. I think a majority of them are unsheltered individuals that are walking up to these centers, or they're using the city buses to get there, and they're stealing to feed that habit is a likely answer.
man, and we gotta really look at reality. Reality is whether we like it or not, or the business community likes it or not. These individuals aren't going to stay in jail forever. You're not going to stay in jail forever over a $250 shoplifting. You know, we could add them all up and you're still probably not gonna be able to stay in jail for a felony shoplifting. That's not how our system is set up. But we're doing an injustice for our individuals who have substance abuse problems, our individuals who have mental health issues, in the fact that we're releasing them back to the community without the proper resources to help them overcome that addiction. As long as they have that addiction, they're gonna continue to create issues and they're gonna continue to shoplift. We need to build a system in this state where individuals are released to the right resources and they could get the substance abuse help that they need or the mental health help that they need, because we know those two issues go hand in hand with a lot of the shoplifting that you see. Yes, we'll start with Google Cross.
How many officers were dedicated to this operation?
That's a Kyle question.
It varied. We worked with our problem response teams, our PRT units, which are patrol marked units in the area commands, and we generally had available a dozen or so detectives, but it would change day to day. So at any given time, there was probably 10 to 15 officers and detectives working this operation.
Was anyone charged with felony shoplifting after this operation?
Several of the individuals were charged with felony shoplifting. A majority were misdemeanor shoplifting, but also had warrants, so they still went to jail.
Did you notice any patterns in what merchandise was being stolen? Any hotspots, specific stores being targeted more than others?
No, I mean, there was a lot of clothing, but we had people walk out with Instapots, comforters. I mean, one guy wore like overalls 2 sizes too big and was just whatever would fit in his pants he put in there. But we also saw that Kohl's at Coronado was subject to a little bit more. It is the closest one to the transit center. It is a direct line of vision shot, if you're not familiar with it, to it, and it's the closest door you can get to. So I think just opportunity and ease of access was part of this.
Obviously, like shoplifting is a crime and people can't just commit crimes and not face any kind of punishment. Obviously we have these stricter penalties with organized retail crime. They passed the legislature. You talk about having resources in place for these people. Is there a concern from police that without those resources in place, moving forward with these stricter penalties could result in a revolving door of people going into prison for like what's a drug-related crime and then becoming a more violent criminal or maybe committing worse?
Matt, that is a great question, and I'm so glad you asked that, because it is a concern of mine. And I've talked to several state legislators. Like, I know the goal was not to create a pipeline to prison. That's why we got rid of bail and people are able to get out of jail. That's why we have detention hearings. But I wish somebody would do a study. Are we hurting these individuals more than helping them? And are they ending up in prison longer because we now have 10 cases against them because we released them without the resources they needed, as opposed to one where if we got them into the system on one charge and we got them the help they needed and we had a system built that gave them the resources they needed and they got drug addiction, that they now have one case. But these poor individuals, they're still drug addicts. And they get released, we arrest them again, and I see the pleas come down. Now you have somebody pleading to 10 cases, and I guarantee you they're going to get more prison time. So yes, I think that everybody thought they were helping individuals and reducing the pipeline to prison by saying, we release you back into the custody and we're not going to keep you in jail. But I think in reality, we're seeing the opposite. They're ending up with longer prison sentences when it finally gets to the point of this case getting to court, and we've set them up for that because we're arresting them over and over again and never treating the underlying issue, which is drug addiction.
But you agree that the system does not have those resources really
The system doesn't have those resources, and you've heard us talk about it. Pre-legislature this year, there's a substantial amount of money involved this year. Like, we have to devote the resources to substance abuse and to mental health, and I will say it over and over again, like, we got to fund those systems. I'm not a professional on those systems. I don't know what those systems need, but the leadership in those areas need to come forward and say what they need to have the right system. I need the courts and the DA's office to say what is the proper system we need in place. That is not the place of the police department, but I'm here to advocate for those systems to get funded the way they need to so that we could stop this revolving door. The revolving door isn't just necessarily stopped by arrests. It's stopped by treating the underlying issue, which is drug addiction and mental health.
I have one more question. Do we know what these people do with these goods on, like, for the most part? Is it like they're taking it to a certain person who fences it, or are they just kind of like walking around the streets and selling it to the people that come across, do we know kind of what they do with these?
That's,
Go ahead. and
that's
go on, Joe.
definitely part of what we want to understand better too. And I don't think we're at a place to share it publicly, but if you're on the part that's buying stolen goods, and Chief already mentioned catalytic converters, you can expect to see our faces fairly soon as well.
So that's like something you guys plan on kind of tackling too, is like the avenue where these goods are going?
Oh no, absolutely, and we've also been in talks with ACS on the future operations. If people need assistance in doing things, doesn't mean you're going to escape this charge, but we're more than happy. You know, I think every police officer would agree, we don't want to see the same bad guy twice doing something. That's it. I caught you once, I cannot see you twice. Whatever does that, drug treatment, jail, we'll use any solution. I just don't want to see you twice.
You know, Matt, and every single one of us as citizens need to take a look inside ourselves. I live in Albuquerque. I come around the different parts of the city, and one of the things I can say is after being here all these years, I don't know how many times people have approached me in parking lots and said, "Do you want to buy this? I got a good deal on it." Every single one of us, we have people nodding their head. It's happening. We have to resist that and say no. Because if every one of us is sick of shoplifting, every one of us is tired of this crime, the moment they can't move the goods, people stop stealing them. But we have to resist the good deals. And everyday citizens, it's hard. I watch. Every day I see people in parking lots approaching people. And we as citizens have to get the word out, say, in order for us to stop this trend, we also have to stop buying it, knowing there is nobody who's going to fool me that says, "Oh yeah, I thought the dude that was selling it outside of the store was legit." We all know it's not legit. So hopefully as citizens, we could also start making a difference in this. Yes, Nana.
I saw that you said 10 of them were arrested, or they were using transit to get away.
29 of the 31.
Were using like public transit.
Public transit, or they were walking up, so they could have been, but we couldn't clearly see it.
Got it. And you said that the Coles, since it was near the transit station, tended to kind of get hit more. So I was just curious how, looking at, because we've seen that before, looking at transit and how that's been utilized in the past, how that played a role in what you were focusing on here.
I think that it did play a role. They noticed quite early in the operation, Kyle updated me that they saw people coming either from the transit center or going towards the transit center. And I think this is where we have to work to a compromise. And I wish both sides of the aisle would come to a middle ground. We've identified everybody that was taken into custody during this operation that we thought were using buses. And we're hoping that we could move forward at some point in time and issue some sort of criminal trespass so that they're no longer allowed to be on the buses, not forever, for a certain period of time. And we need to develop a system where we're able to say, look, right now, currently, it's very difficult because of the criminal activity that you're bringing onto the bus. You're making it unsafe. But we all know that at a certain point in time, a criminal trespass notification expires and people would have the opportunity to build their way towards proving themselves to be able to go back and utilize these bus services. So I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. We'll be in communication and contact with all of our people who are the decision makers on this, and hopefully we could find a compromise where these individuals who commit these crimes are also held a level of accountability not to be back on that system.
I have two questions here. The first one is that we spoke to a business owner in Nob Hill earlier today about the recent retail that they're seeing and around the area. Is that a particular focus that will be coming up within this operation?
Like Nob Hills?
Nob Hill.
Oh yeah, so we're in the process of looking at crime stat numbers, and part of what it is, we need the source to report the thefts. And that's how we're designing our targeting. But we also work with the trade organizations because they're bringing their mouthpieces to it, and they're telling us what's happening, and then we can customize our operation to it. But there's no part of Albuquerque that's going to be safe from our operation if you're going to be stealing.
The other thing we're also doing is Nob Hill is the next step. We are very fortunate that our federal delegation has been really good at getting us funding at the federal level for cameras. We've taken big steps forward in installing cameras all along Central in the downtown area, and there's very few places that we don't have some kind of site with. There are always going to be blind spots, but our next step is the Nob Hill area, and we already have a plan to implement more cameras along Louisiana on between I-40 and Manal. So we are working towards also using the upgrading technology, because in a couple of weeks we're going to have a press conference just discussing all the technology we've brought in and how it's assisted us in a variety of cases. And if you look at that technology going back to the horrible incident when we had a child killed in a crosswalk and how we utilize cameras and that, and each one of you reads the criminal complaints that are going through homicide right now, and the extensive use of phones and technology is just unbelievable. So we're also going to rely on technology to help us identify some of these individuals and hopefully take them into custody and help build those cases of them committing felony shoplifting.
I know we've been talking about the big box stores. So stores like Walmart obviously have changed their operating hours, even sometimes closing down because of the recent crime there. How do they feel right now with this operation? I know we're kind of improving that relationship now.
Well, so that's what DC Hawks and Lieutenant Olquest are doing a lot of is FaceTime with those stores. And again, we want to partner up with every retail store that is facing these problems right now, and we think we're going to be fairly effective in moving ourselves around the city and doing it. But I can tell you, the business community and the meetings we go to are very excited about this and very receptive in wanting to partner with us. And they understand a lot of the real world challenges that Chief talks about with the justice system, and we help explain those processes to them because we need them to stay engaged as well. They got to show up to court if it's going to be one that's going to go to trial, things of that nature. We need that commitment from all the parties all the way through.
And it's a national problem. I just recently read an article of all the Walmarts that were closing. I mean, locally, when you heard about the Walmart on Zuni closing, it was like, oh my God, what's wrong with Albuquerque? Nationwide, there's Walmarts closing and there's other stores that are closing because of retail theft. So we're trying to do our part and be more proactive than a lot of other cities are, and we're trying to put an emphasis into this. So we will continue to have these short-term operations, unknown times, and hopefully we can take people into custody. Because Kyle did notice one thing. He said by the end of the week, the word had gotten out and there weren't as many people out shoplifting. So we're hoping that if we could mix it up and do a day here, 2 days here, that it's going to have an impact on people's mindset of when they're going to shoplift and when they're not. Any other questions? If not, we're going to run out the door.
One
Yes.
more, sorry, one last one. So I know in the past APD offered something where officers were able to have overtime and serve as security guards for a lot of these businesses. Has that stopped? Is it still going?
Yes, it's
Is that gonna
stopped.
change?
I take full responsibility for that.
Is that going to change?
No, it's not going to change. I have a fundamental value that if you are going to contract the city of Albuquerque and the Albuquerque Police Department, and you're going to say, I'm okay with officers using force, arresting individuals, and public tax-paying dollars assuming the liability for this, but I will not do that with the private security that I have there, and they're going to watch people shoplift. I'm not going to change that stance that we're not going to provide security service for them. I think that these companies are probably richer than the city of Albuquerque, a lot of them, and have more money than most cities, and the responsible thing for them to do is not only have a set of rules when the police department is there and the taxpayers are on the hook for liability, but also when their private security is there. And they could assist with this a whole lot more by, like you said, changing hours. I went recently to a local store and I saw how they'd changed the entrance, and I was like, wow, this is great. They're allowing only so many people in. Like, they're starting to get more proactive. And you know what? If a store that is doing a lot of proactive things to defend themselves from being shoplifters and helping approach me individually on a case-by-case basis, I may take that into consideration and make a modification, but I also want to see them get engaged and them not just buy their way out of it with taxpayers' liability. Anything else good?
Thank you.
Right. You guys be safe.